me go ahead and start recording. So today, excuse me, apparently I didn't get ready to talk. Today what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up the first part of project planning. So we're going to talk about fun things like personnel and staffing and how we manage people and all that fun stuff. And the rest of the week we're going to talk about things like risk. We'll do some number crunching later on. So get you all to become good project managers. So thank you to those of you that filled out the surveys so far. Again, the first one that came from me is just for my benefit to make sure that you're all relatively happy or okay with the class materials. I'm not going to make any final decisions until tonight because that's when the survey ends, but I have gotten some good feedback from you all so far. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another page, well, not another page, but another section on the homepage with a list of upcoming deadlines. Probably linked to the actual homework assignments. It was about 50-50 so far, so half the people like the assignments where they are. The other half would rather like one big long list. So what I will do is I will just do both. So anytime we have a new assignment, I'll put like another bullet item in this kind of overall aggregation of assignments, basically. And that way you can have it all in one place. I didn't realize that your calendars were dumping everything from all your classes into them, so that's probably annoying to keep track of if you're using the Blackboard calendar. You know, not just my class, but everybody else's class. So the other one that went live today, like I said, I sent you the announcement, and that should be the last blast of announcements from me so I don't clog up your email inbox. That one is for the department's benefit. It's a new faculty thing, so if you're happy or not with my performance so far, just be honest, and basically Dr. Leidig will review it with me how everything's going. Um, constructive criticism is usually welcome so that I can do a better job for all of you. And I made the snap decision at the end of last class, so you all benefit from this. Yes, it is. So in order to get more feedback, I'll give you a handful of extra credit points for both of them. I mean, otherwise, what's the benefit to you, right? You can tell them how much you like or dislike me and what works and what doesn't for you. And if you want to participate, I'll throw some extra credit your way, sure. There's a second one, yeah. So it was coincidental timing. So my survey and this other one are unfortunately at the same time. But yeah, so the second one just went live today. It is in Blackboard. Press F11 to exit full screen, really? Right, you can go away, you can go away. It is in Blackboard under course information. So I dropped the announcement. School CIS survey opens today. But it is right here, faculty midterm evals. So it's just basically for the department to track how I'm doing for all of you right now. So again, thanks for all your feedback so far. I definitely read all of them, and I will do my best to help you out there. Where's the other one then? It's in that course information page. So one other thing is that, so I'm combining the results of this slide from the morning's class as well, because I want to schedule it to be roughly the same dates since we're on track together. Your midterm deliverable is going to be the last week in October. So my understanding is it's a little bit later than your other classes, which should be nice so you don't have an overlap. But it's going to be 2 days. So basically, I'm thinking that each team will get like 7 to 10 minutes to talk about their projects, and we will all do constructive criticism and feedback for everybody. So basically, that big long email I sent out about clarifying deadlines and deliverables and all that. Your first big one is the midterm. Your last big one will be the final. If you are looking for where you should be implementation-wise, your target is that final exam date, right? So that's when everything's going to be due. Your implementation's done as of finals week, basically. For midterm, you don't have to be nearly as far if you are not, right? I'm just looking to see where you currently are. And the point of this is basically to get you thinking about what has to be done to finish things off for you. So if you haven't even written a line of code yet, You might have to mock up something to show me what your vision is, right? And then you have all of that extra effort that's going to have to be done to round that out. So I'll be looking for what have you done so far? What do you plan to do? Um, what remaining tasks are there? Have you started considering who's going to be doing what, things of that nature? The actual artifacts that you're developing, these are coming to you as the homework assignments, basically. So what you're going to be doing to flesh out your final deliverables, they're all going to be kind of packaged in. Depending on the grades you all get, you may have to refine them a little bit to fit them into a nice document, but overall it shouldn't be too rough, I would think. Um, and I know some of you were looking for more checkpoints, more kind of feedback on where you're at currently. So your next assignment is going to involve timetabling. So basically you're going to come up with a model of basically planning out the remainder of your project. So you're going to start thinking about what tasks you have to do, approximately when they will be done by, things of that nature. Not strictly a Gantt chart. We'll probably go a more agile route for this, but just be aware that it's going to hopefully help you plan out the rest of the semester. And I thought I signed out of you Hangouts. Sorry about the little bloop. Okay, so yeah, and then I will give you more feedback on, or more of a direction, I guess, on what I'm looking for this thing. Basically just, we'll do a Blackboard Collaborate session. Everybody can talk. You can show me what you've done, things of that nature. So far, it's looking like Wednesday, Friday are going to be the winner. Does anybody have any questions? Because I know I sent out a few email blasts. I'll make sure everything's clear for all of you. Again, as long as you keep up with the homework, as long as you keep up with everything that I'm basically doling out to you, metrics-wise, you should be okay. If you feel like you're falling behind with the term project, just keep in mind that final delivery date is the end of the semester. That's your goal. I will check in with you about 3/4 of the way through. Excuse me. What's going on here? So like we'll have kind of a semi-formal review of where you're at in November. And to keep you all kind of moving forward, I'll ask you in some of your homework assignments, how are your tasks coming, things of that nature. But overall, what I'm seeing from your assignments and your group project chatter that I've been kind of randomly peeking in on, your assignments, everything seems to be going relatively okay. So yeah, it looks like we'll plan for those last 2 days then. So I'll schedule that and I will send you all out basically a list of talking points. Cool. So that's all the administrative stuff for today. So we ended last time talking about burn down and burn up charts, right? So we are planning tasks that we have to do for our project. We need to figure out what has to be done, in what order, what gets priority, et cetera, right? Makes perfect sense. Well, what do we do to make these tasks successful? Well, we need people, right? So we are still pretending, right? Pretend you're the project manager or you're an analyst of some regard. You have to actually figure out which people to staff the project with. And if we are at the conceptual stage of the project, we may have flexibility in, who we bring in. Do we need to hire new people? Do we bring members from other project teams in, right? So what kind of decisions do we have to make at this level? Things to consider. So here is a nice little bulleted list of effectively all of those things we've been talking about in our design life cycles for software, right? Whether it's agile or waterfall, doesn't matter. It's all going to be there in some way, shape, or form. They all are going to require people to handle them. And those people are more than likely going to be different, right? So you don't want one person doing everything. That leads to disasters like we saw with like the Therac or the Challenger explosion, right? So we're gonna have a whole bunch of different people managing these tasks. And why do we have different people? We have different perspectives. We have, double, triple, quadruple checking, sanity checking, making sure there's no gaps in anything, and make sure all of our tests pass, that we're not overlooking anything, and to really help move things along, right? So all of these activities are going to require people. And why do I keep talking about people? Well, we're going to have, again, different perspectives and different backgrounds, and you're going to have to be able to work with all kinds of other people. So how do we pick a person for a project? All right, all of you in class, you all either self-organized into teams, maybe you had friends or you advertised what your project was and everybody wants to work on this thing. So you kind of self-organized yourselves, unless you were assigned because you needed to be assigned basically. What do we care about though? So you should be able to work with those people. You should be able to communicate with them. Hopefully they have experiences in what you're trying to do. If not, they should be able to learn, right? So take a look at this list here. These are some of the things we care about when selecting people for a project. If you kind of read between the lines here, for instance, here are all of the things you care about at interviews. So take what you get out of this list and apply it to your ability to present yourself when you're going for a job interview, for instance, right? We assume you're probably going to be able to do the work, right? You probably have the technical background or the skills to learn whatever is necessary. Now, if you go to work for like Google or some crazy tech company, they may have really weird job interview questions, or you have to do crazy techniques on a board. But more often than not, are you able to program? Yes. Can you learn new things? Yes. What we care about more is how do you work in a team environment? And that's why you all get forced into these team projects year in and year out. It's training you to work together as a team, to work with other people of different backgrounds and be able to communicate with them. And communication is the key thing here. And that's why I keep harping on it. It's very easy to develop something super cool. However, if you can't tell anybody what you did or how to use it or how to train people to use it, or your super cool world changing application is never going to see the light of day. Nobody will use it because they don't know how. But if you're able to communicate, if you're able to, say, share responsibility even, you can actually have a good, successful project. Now, all of these skills here, these are your soft skills, right? Things that are very hard for engineers to pick up if you are more of the introverted type. So how do you talk to other people? Well, you have to force yourself to do it in a way, right? But once you start being able to communicate, then you might see your project start becoming more and more successful. And rather than going a bit too philosophic here, or I guess psychoanalyzing, um, at least being able to describe your work to others is a huge step in the right direction. So in college, we're training you to learn new skills very quickly, right? You learn C, C++, Java, you can very easily pick up Python, right? You can very easily pick up C Sharp. They're all the same thing at the core. They just have different syntax constructs. Or you go off the rails and you do something crazy like Julia or Racket or Lisp, or start doing quantum computing gates. You have the ability to learn these technical skills. The soft skills are a lot harder to train. So picking people who can work well together is definitely key. Now, let's say that we have a team of people. Hopefully they work well together. Possible that they don't. So it's going to be your job as the project manager, or your role in charge here of assigning these people to the project. Oops. Just more so doing this to get the slide count that I'm on. We have to be able to make sure that they have lines of communication. That people feel comfortable communicating and that they are able to resolve any problems that may occur. Might be your job to kind of enable that. So we can have, basically what I'm trying to get at. Oop, I didn't. Well, I guess you all get this, so you can chime in here as well. What I'm trying to get the point across here is that a team is always going to have some kind of a communication breakdown. No matter how well you plan, no matter how well you choose your people, at some point it will break down. And it's just the real world perspective. Somebody's going to have a bad day, or they're going to get frustrated. Something's going on at home that's not even work related, and they just don't want to talk. Okay, well, if my requirements engineer doesn't want to talk to me, we can't flesh out this particular safety mechanism, right? or maybe we're frustrated or we are just not paying attention and we overlook a whole bunch of things. Our communication doesn't have to be this kind of antagonistic issue. It could just be we are overlooking something. So possible that we have a breakdown. Now you as the project manager, you're going to have to resolve this. All right, so I have a slide that I forgot to reset from the last class, but feel free to chime in with some other suggestions here. Let's pretend we're project managers, right? You are running a team of like 5 or 10 people, and you start seeing things slip through the cracks. Test cases are not being fully measured correctly, right? We might start seeing failures, or you might be looking at coverage reports, which we'll talk about a little bit later, where we're not covering all of our test cases, or we have a huge slew of missing requirements. These are all things that could result from a communication failure. So here are some things that the earlier class talked about where, you've already seen it because I already flashed on the screen, so I'm not going to reset it now. But how do you resolve failures? How do you get people to talk again? Nobody knew. I mean, I didn't know why this thing is super huge right here. This is going to go to the next screen when I do that. But figuring out ways to get people to talk to each other is important. So if anybody has any other suggestions based on, what you see here, feel free to chime in and I'll kind of watch what changes on the screen. But how do you get people to start talking again? So a lot of these are kind of group activity type things, right? So go out and play paintball, do some kind of a team bonding, not like those weird company events. Thank you for saying that, because when I was in industry, the company events, like the forced, let's all get to know each other off the clock kind of things, those drove me insane. I'm not that person. I know a lot of people love it. Like the thing now is to go out and do escape rooms and all that with your teammates, right? And honestly, that can be a good way to break down some barriers of communication where you have an informal setting, people might feel a little bit more relaxed, and then they start talking again. And that ideally kind of trickles through eat them. Cruel. Awesome. Fire them. Ooh, you guys are had a bad lunch day, maybe? Either that or we're getting snarky. No, no, please no. Yes, Kirby's back. So I took your feedback. Kirby and Link are back. I left my my GNU upstairs and my very angry, foreboding crow that nobody's seen yet. But yeah, figured I needed some backup for all of you. I will say, management loves these kinds of tactics. Your consultants love these kind of tactics. Getting people in a situation that does not work has shown to actually help out. People who tend to be engineers, maybe a little more introverted, absolutely despise these activities. I'm not saying you have to. They can be fun. But forcing people who work together to go also out and have fun together afterwards is kind of it's a very fine line. So be very careful if you go to do any of these. But there's a really good suggestion in here. Where'd it go? It kind of popped. Okay, so change up the pathways for communication. So this is a good suggestion, right? We can do this when we're at work. Maybe we can enable different types of dialogue. Imagine being forced to do something. Yeah. So I will say this. I did have one exercise, so paintball team building exercise. Paintball can be a lot of fun. We did it on the clock though, which was kind of nice. But when I was an intern many, many, many moons ago, we did a paintball team building activity, and I had so much fun pelting my project manager with paintballs. It's very cathartic. But yeah, finding ways to communicate is a very tricky thing. And if you can manage it, then you honestly have done a wonderful job as a manager. One of the other suggestions last class was to not micromanage as well, because micromanaging's bad. Go get a drink together. That can go one of two ways. Can go really well, or it can go very badly. You start introducing alcohol and things can get very, very wonky in a workplace environment. I will say that. But it's one way to loosen things up, right? So I'm not necessarily saying no. Just be careful when you introduce things like that. That was the only thing though with going out after work to get a drink and all that. Like I'm done with my coworkers once the end of the day happens. I don't want to go out and talk about work at a bar with them. But that's just me, you know. Everybody's different for blowing off steam. So the things to consider, and why I'm kind of talking about communication so much here, is that the more people you add onto a team, the more lines of communication there will be, right? So if you have two people, there's one line of communication. Project manager and peon, for instance, or senior programmer and junior programmer. Then you start introducing an entire team or more, you can actually model how many ways they can talk to each other. Is a very simple relational formula here, right? So 5 people, you have 10 lines of communications. You have 10 people, that's 9 times 10 divided by 2. So what, 45 ways people can talk to each other? If any of these lines of communication breaks down, then you can start having problems in your project. And obviously this tends to happen with the more people you add on, right? So let's look at this 4 people diagram right here. So depending on your project, you know, 2 of them might be analysts or requirements engineers, and 2 of these might be programmers. Depending on your model, these 2 people, for instance, right here, they might disappear to go work on something else. Then you're left with 2 lines of communication. Depending on your software model you're using, and we'll talk about that here in a few moments, maybe I need their feedback. However, these lines of communication are no longer there. And it's not because of some antagonistic problem that happened. They're just busy with other work. So your actual software process may even inform how people talk. Right, so consider that these 2 are working on their Android application. We had 2 team members that were the analysts. They defined all the requirements, then they moved on to another project. Well, 3 months down the line, customer comes by, oh, we like your login form, but wouldn't it be nice if it also did this? Well, it sure would, but our process doesn't allow any additions, and our analysts are busy elsewhere. So then we have to figure out other lines of communication, basically. You know, can we bring them back in? And we start talking about paying people. That's an even different model as well. So this is kind of one of the things to consider. The little slidey word cloud thing was, how do we fix communication lines? But what if communication is so ingrained in our process that it's either good or bad for a particular instance, right? So go back to waterfall. Everything is highly structured, you know, requirements, design, implementation, testing, very clear delineations of steps. And I talked about how hard it is to go back. Okay, well, what I said before was we've done our check mark and we've moved on, right? So we've passed our milestone. We are now doing implementation. Well, this thing happens where, okay, we need new requirements. What does that mean? Well, we have to go back in our process. Well, what does that mean? These people who were involved way back here now either need to be brought back in, or we need to bring in new people to take over their role, right? So maybe the programmers have to be an analyst for a while just to kind of backfill effort. It doesn't end up just being a check mark now. Now it's a staffing problem too. So there's a whole lot of things that can happen simply related to communication, which is crazy. Then you have the flip side. There's the agile method, right? Everybody talks on a daily basis. The analysts talk, the programmers talk, everybody's one kind of floating unit where we pick different tasks every other day. Communication can be very fluid, but you don't have a structured environment anymore. You know, depending on your scrum master, obviously, or whoever's quarterbacking your process. Just keep in mind that your entire software paradigm can inform who talks to who talks to whom, I guess. This is assuming you go the project manager route, right? It is not as simple as writing code anymore, unfortunately. Now we have to think of the entire thing as a actual living, breathing project entity. Okay, so a little bit of a sidebar here from at least from the book that this is based on, talking about meetings. So this is one of the things you will come to experience if you go into industry. And I'm going to give you some personal advice here and some fairly standard advice. So one of the things you're going to see with meetings is that everybody more or less hates them, but they're necessary. Why are meetings necessary? They get people together. in the same room or, virtual room, obviously now, right? But we can talk about our status. We can ask for help. We can ask for feedback, reviews. Every stakeholder that has to be in this meeting can talk face to face, right? We don't have to write an email, wait 10 days for a response. We can talk to somebody right now. And depending on your process, that may also inform how your meetings are structured too, right? So let's talk about some common complaints. And the goal is for you all to get ready for industry and to make your meetings successful, because nobody likes a pointless meeting. All right, so I'm just going to pop all these up here. What are some things that we care about in meetings? You all have been forced to have meetings every week, right? And put your meeting minutes up online. My little guideline for your meetings is intended to keep you on track and to keep the meetings focused, right? Things that are problematic with meetings tend to be driven by either poorly structured agendas, maybe people are not prepared to talk, or you're missing people. Right, so think about a meeting where it took you 20 minutes to get going. That 20 minutes could have been much better served doing other things rather than BSing about, whatever happened in the latest, I guess, Rocket League or League of Legends or Rocket League. What's the exciting esports now? I think Rocket League's kind of dying off now that it's gone free to play for the excitement level, right? Would it be still Global Offensive or anything like that? I guess I'm going off the rails now. But the point is that you spent all that time talking about nothing even relating to your meeting. Now, the people who want to talk about it probably loved it, right? It was nice to unwind and talk about something not work related. But the other 10 people in your meeting didn't care, and that your time was wasted by listening to it. So, having an unclear agenda, definitely a problem. If you are expected to speak and you are not ready to speak, that's going to reflect pretty badly on you and your project team, honestly, right? Or if you have people who are late or absent. Now, if you're non-essential to the meeting, like you're just listening for information and you're late, that's just kind of rude, but you get past it. But if everybody's waiting for you to talk about your project or your function that you wrote and you come 20 minutes late, then it's even more problematic there. Or alternatively, everybody starts arguing, right? I come up with this awesome system that I want everybody to check out and give me feedback on. And rather than tell me, okay, this is good, this is bad, blah, 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 they start arguing or attacking or, right? So meetings should be well focused. They should be have a clear purpose. The correct people should be there, and it should be constructive. Once you start going off the rails, these meetings get very, very difficult to attend. And the other thing I will say too is that if you start going down this road, future meetings get worse because people expect to have a bad time. So that makes it even worse because everybody starts expecting bad things, right? So, not to go off the rails too much here, just I have very strong feelings about how meetings should be run. The company I worked at, we were very clear in our meeting agendas. If you scheduled an hour for a meeting, for instance, and it only took 20 minutes to talk about the content, then you left after 20 minutes. Right? You didn't spend the entire hour just using the time to talk about the NHL draft, for instance, or what's going on in football right now. Get your stuff done and go back to work is basically kind of what more people tend to appreciate, I would say. So, not to wax too philosophic on my personal preferences and inflict that all on you, but how do we make sure a meeting's productive and it doesn't go down that antagonistic route, or it doesn't, come to blows even? How do we care? Or what do we do? Who needs to be in the meeting should be clearly identified. Don't just invite everybody in your department, right? That's a good way to make people feel obligated to come even though they don't need to be there. Have an agenda. Again, bullet points of what we're talking about. Get through the bullet point, move on to the next thing, be done. And then track and follow up. So if you have somebody who can take down notes, that will usually be helpful. Any actions that have to be taken care of, make sure they get taken care of. And your meeting experience can be a lot better. Like I said, meetings are always dreaded more or less, but they can be handled appropriately. So that's my soapboxing for today. So at this point, we have talked about defining tasks. We've talked about how to get team members on board. We've talked about how to get them communicating. And now I've told you how you should run all your meetings. Well, run them well. The last thing that we have to think about is how do we actually organize our project teams? Now, this is going to be one of those things where it completely depends on your environment and the project you're working on. Also the people. So you could also factor that in as well if you want to, whether you've already chosen the people or not. There are generally two kind of high-level ways you can structure a team. You may have one person at the top and then trickle down levels of responsibility. This would be more of a structured environment. Or you have an unstructured environment where everybody's basically on the same page, right? The same level of ownership, I suppose, on the project. You could call this the chief programmer team model, the more structured side, where basically you have like a technical expert at the top who kind of passes down high-level guidelines for how everything should be done. Or you could have everybody kind of working together, and that's more of your agile approach. So let me skip ahead here, because I've got a nice little visual for what this structured environment looks like. So here you have a chief programmer or a lead programmer or a technical expert, whatever your organization calls this person. They're at the top. They pass down the laws for the underlings to implement, right? You might have an assistant or you might not. Basically somebody who's a little bit closer to the rest of the team that can spread the good word, I suppose, about what our current strategy is. And then you're going to start seeing your actual teams, right? So your senior and your junior programmers, slides is hiding that now from me, but that's like your people with several years of programming versus your fresh out of college type of programmers, right? So these are the people actually implementing the designs. You have your librarian here. So again, this is your configuration management specialist more often than not. Whoever's handling the requirements systems, the your source code repositories, all of these things where we're tracking all of our objects together and providing those traceability links between them. You have your admin team. This could be staffing. This could be any kind of oversight or business or marketing, basically the non-programmers, more or less, I suppose. You're going to have your testers. So again, these should not be your programmers because then you get into problems, right? Testers need to be separate from developers. But here we have a very structured view, right? We know who is in charge. We know who is probably going to be the one relaying instructions from those in charge to the rest of the team. And this chief programmer might be overseeing multiple projects too, right? So it just, again, depends. And then you have your normal teams here. Very structured. Everybody knows exactly what their role is. I am a junior programmer. I am not a librarian, for instance, right? I am not a configuration management specialist. I am not the admin. But this is structured. We may also have an unstructured view. And I don't have a picture for this one, but take what you see here and level out the playing field, right? Everybody is on the same level, approximately. You might have somebody higher up that's, again, still serving as like the point of contact or maybe kind of guiding things. It could be like your scrum master, your project manager, however you're structuring your environment. But it's a lot more loosely coupled. Now, why would we pick one over the other? Because this is actually a very interesting thing to talk about from a management perspective. This, again, depends on multiple factors. The project, the environment, your business, your team, lots of things go in here. And where you would pick one over the other, this is going to be one of those, it depends. First of all, do you have the flexibility to pick this? This may already be chosen for you, so you don't have a choice. But things to consider at kind of a high level here. So I've got highly structured. Again, this is your chief programmer style, or loosely structured, kind of more of an agile style in a way. A highly structured team Generally, we'll do well with projects that have a high level of certainty. And what that means is that everything is more or less set in stone. We know what the requirements are, we know what the deliverables are, we know what the milestones are, we know what everybody's expectations for the project are. Kind of all of the things that go nicely with a waterfall style model or a variation of waterfall, right? We have a lot of information at hand. That information is probably not going to change too much. So structure is good for that. Um, Also, repetition in large projects. So for a large project, when you have tens to hundreds of people on board, making sure everybody knows their role is a lot, in a way, better than having a loose structure because it's very easy to get to overlook something or overlook a role that needs to be fulfilled. And then lastly here, and I talked about these out of order, but repetition. And I'm going to talk to some experience in the automotive industry for this one. So I used to work at an automotive supplier where we would build products for like the big three, so GM, Chrysler, Ford, or we'd contract for Fiat or Daimler or whatever car manufacturer needed something. Well, we develop a product, and like here, GM, here is our latest product. Okay, and then a year later, okay, here Chrysler, here's this product. Here Ford, here's this product. It's the same thing. It's been tweaked for every customer's requirements, but it's very repetitive, right? If you have a nice structured environment, it becomes almost assembly line like to churn these things out. Now, obviously, every customer gets what they want. Product A becomes A prime for the other customer, right? We yank out functionality or we tweak it for their needs, but we have exactly the pieces in place company-wise that we need to make that a success. Right? I know that I will be the junior programmer on every single one of those projects, tweaking startup code or tweaking messages on our network bus, for instance, right? Whereas contrast that with something more agile, where you have a very loosely structured team, more or less. And I'm generalizing here, right? Agile can be very structured depending on your setup. But if you're more loosely structured and you have more flexibility in your team, you have more chances to go out and explore something new, right? So a loose structured team is good when you have a lot of uncertainty, meaning you don't know everything. So if I have a new and exciting project that I'm working on, it's never been done before, I have no idea what technologies we're going to need. I have no idea what programming paradigms we have to follow. We don't know a lot. Like an R&D type of project. You're probably going to want to have team members who have the flexibility to go and explore new things. Let's try some things out. Try this, move this around here, do this, do requirements while we're developing a prototype because everything is changing so quickly because we're, again, exploring or experimenting. This is basically where you can start getting creative, right? If it's highly structured, you're going to have requirements, deliverables, done. We know what we have to do. With a loose structure, you have flexibility. You have the ability to explore things. In that, both of these techniques have a place, right? So here is kind of a structured example where there are two groups and they're tasked with building a hotel. And this is kind of a construction analog type of thing. So Sally Phillip here, gave a structured and an unstructured team the task of building a hotel. All right, so the structured team, everything is very clearly defined. Everything is set in stone. People's responsibilities are very clear. Unstructured team, build me a hotel. Okay. Results. And when we say always the same, that means it was a repeatable experiment, basically. The structured teams would always finish something like a functional days in. If you've ever stayed at a low to mid-range hotel chain where, they're always, what you're getting out of it, right? You're not getting a lot of crazy features, but you get something functional. Place to sleep and get a nice continental breakfast, for instance. That's what they always built, right? How do they always finish this? They have responsibilities and deadlines to meet. The unstructured teams get creative. They build something crazy, like a Taj Mahal kind of a situation where you have this beautiful, gorgeous building, but it's maybe not completed. So we have missing plumbing or missing electrical, but it looks great. And the point is not necessarily to denigrate one of these two styles, it's that you have to find a balance, right? So if you're going to be a good project manager later on in your career, you need to figure out how to manage your team such that they both get expectations and deliverables and all of that, but also give them the room to explore. And it's going to depend on what your project is and what your business environment is again, right? So, question to you all, what would you rather work on? Do you want a structured environment or an unstructured environment? And while I wait for some responses to come into the chat, let me kind of contextualize this in terms of your term project, right? So I have basically outlined a term project list of requirements which enables creativity, and this was intentional. I gave you very little structure in what I'm expecting, right? I said, go build me a term project that you're interested in. And I gave you like, if you're interested in it, you'll work on it, you'll come up with something really cool, really creative. I don't care what it is, I just want to see something. And I'm kind of adding on that this should be like a minimum viable product or a prototype type of situation, right? Are you going to have a finished, polished product come final exam time that you can put out on the App Store and make $1 million, or put up on Steam green when it's not greenlight anymore, right? It's Steam early access and get your game played by millions, or whatever you're building, right? Probably not, because I'm not giving you hard deadlines for, okay, I need your requirements by week 2, I need your designs for your various UML diagrams by week 4, I need a prototype at week 6, we have to do Q&A at week 8, and then week 10, your SRS is delivered, and your final product has to be fully validated. Well, no, because that really hamstrings you in terms of what you're doing, right? You all, sorry, are basically exploring something new and exciting for you. If I give you a rigorous structure of how to complete that, you will end up with a very bare bones yet functional application. Whereas if you're more flexible and creative, you can actually explore some really nifty concepts added on. And the idea would be to crystallize it later on, right? Probably would prefer more structure in a work environment. Yeah. So this is kind of the diverging point right now in industry, where you have a lot of these older corporations where they're very structured, and you have a lot more of the startup type environments where they're going more unstructured. They can both be successful. The point is that you're probably going to need a little bit of both to have any kind of a successful project, right? If we all go the pure Scrum route where you put your note cards up on the board, and today I'm going to work on this task, even though one of you is working on it yesterday, well, that can be really helpful to get different perspectives, but yeah, it just depends. Like if this thing never gets finished and we don't have a hard deliverable set on it because we don't have a structure, it can really go off the rails. But the point is, yeah, so more structure in a work environment, unstructured, more creativity. It just depends on your project, which is kind of the interesting thing to say. Like there is no formula for what you should use. It's going to be what makes the most sense for your project team at that point in time. So hopefully that makes sense. And again, I'm not intending to like completely freak people out with how little structure I've given on the term project, right? The point was to be creative, even if you're not a creative person. Like for me, I absolutely need structure in my projects. Otherwise, I never get them done, right? I want to work on this, 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 and this. And if I don't have a hard deliverable and a hard deadline, I'm probably not going to finish it. If I have somebody breathing down my neck saying, hey, you have to get this function done by this week, and then you have to do your testing, and you have to ship it out to the QA team, then it will get done because I have something to work under. That's me. You all may be different. More likely than not, you will probably experience one of these, well, probably both of these types of environments along the way. Just be aware that there is a place and a time for both of them. It's going to be up to you to determine what that means. But again, we are project managers at this point, right? We have moved up the ranks. We've seen the different styles of what works at the company, and you will implement what makes the most sense for you at that point in time. All right, so we have a few minutes left, so we will start getting into effort and risk and how this can basically maybe even inform your decisions on what you select. So more likely than not, you're probably going to be going into a company where it's more likely than not product driven, right? You need deliverables. You're going to have customers or clients that you have to get those deliverables to. And whether it's like consumer driven or internal business driven, it's still a product for a customer, right? You build a internal intranet web application for all of the employees worldwide to use. It's still a product that you're delivering, just internal versus external. Things we care about, though, and again, we've talked about the people and all that. Now we can start actually estimating effort, estimating risks, talking about things like uncertainty and knowledge and information. All right, so what we care about here is cost, and it's going to come back to cost more likely than not. Cost can mean money, it can mean time or effort. Basically, cost is what we are sinking into a project to make it successful. And this is one of the trickiest things to estimate because what's going to happen is that we're going to want to start estimating cost very early on in the life cycle, right? We start proposing a new project and you start doing those things like the feasibility studies and initial, market research and all that fun stuff. How much is it going to cost us to build this? When do we start seeing a profit out of it, right? Again, consumer driven, money driven, even if it is internal, what's the risk versus reward for doing this? When effort estimation comes into play, you're trying to kind of model and predict how useful this widget will be for your company. So what do we care about in terms of costs? We care about facilities. So consider if you're going to work in an office building, we have to rent the building. We have to maybe rent spaces inside the building. We have to pay for office furniture, cubicle walls, desks. We have to pay for the cafeteria people to come and prepare, lobster and caviar for our employees because that's the kind of company we are. You have to pay for the telephone lines, for the internet. So all of these costs factor in to it. And this is right, like if you're a brand new company setting up for the first time, right? You're gonna have to eat all these costs. If you've been functioning for a while, maybe you have to like subcontract all these costs so that you can have your project team. It just depends. Again, point is not necessarily to like frighten you or anything, but there's a lot of hidden costs with projects in the real world, I suppose. Right now, your students, your cost is basically time and your sanity level for personal projects. And grade, I suppose. So then let's say that we take care of the facilities. Well, we might also need to pay for software tools, right? So software licenses, programs, computers, server rental, everything that's going to go into that. And then last but not least, your staff. And people are going to cost the absolute most out of any of these other costs. So let's consider that you are a project manager and you want to hire a new employee, right? So I want a fresh grad out of Grand Valley. Needs 10 years with Angular, obviously, because that's how we write job descriptions. You need 5 years in quantum computing logic. You need Julia knowledge and a working full stack implementation knowledge because everybody's got to be a full stack developer, right? Maybe DevOps too. Let's throw that in there as well. Okay, so we find the perfect person and I want to hire them. Does my cost for that person stop and end at their salary? Say you go out and start making, what, 85 grand, 90 grand, something like that for starters? No, that's just the smallest piece. We also have to pay for your healthcare. We have to pay for your benefits. We have to pay for any vacation time, any personal development, life insurance, bonuses. There is a ton of cost that goes into staffing. And this could be for engineers. It could be for, temp staff. It could be administrative fees for, administrative folks, contractors. There's a whole lot of money that goes into simply hiring somebody. And it sounds horrible from a programmer's perspective, right? Because you're not necessarily a project manager yet. But this all has to be entered in as line items for your estimations. I will talk about this figure next time. This is basically the amount of uncertainty that we have in our project, in any project really, but I'll start with this next time, okay? Does anybody have any questions from today at all? Today's been Professor Frederick's soapboxes on how awful meetings are and how we can avoid having to ever be in a meeting with him. All right, well, if you are all good, I will see you all on Wednesday. We will wrap some of this up and we will move on. Don't forget you have your homework due Friday, I believe. I will start adding links in Blackboard for that. So otherwise, have a wonderful couple of days and I'll see you Wednesday. Bright and chipper. Bye, everybody.